Welcome, everyone, to RocketMSP. I'm Steve Taylor, your host. Today I'm going to be joined by Josh Hohbein. Hohbein. I almost said Hohbein, but it's Josh Hohbein, and he is the security lead for CentrexIT. And we are going to talk about selling cybersecurity, uh, and not one of those, no offense to the people that are, not one of those cybersecurity sales experts. It's coming from an MSP. Okay, so we're gonna have a real conversation with a real MSP. We're gonna talk about how they really sell cybersecurity. So, without further ado, Josh, welcome, sir.
Hey, glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you, man. So, why don't you give us a little bit of background? How long have you been doing MSP stuff with
Oh
Centrex?
man. With Centrix, just under 2 years.
Okay,
MSP slash IT stuff for me has been about what year is it? About 17.
2024.
Yeah, about 17 years at this point, 15 to 17. So
Okay,
it's basically been my mostly my career, my adult life has been IT or MSP work.
very cool. So, where is Centrex located?
Our headquarters are in Southern California, in the San Diego area, but we do have client reach kind of nationwide. So I would say we're a good maybe 60-70% San Diego and 30% East Coast, Central, Upper Pacific, Northwest. So a little bit of everything.
Um, and I figure we might as well just for the sake of full disclosure, you have like a cold or allergies or
Oh yeah, I definitely have a cold. It just came out of nowhere Monday night, so I've been fighting it off. Been slowly better over the days, but
it's long enough. We can joke and say you have COVID, right? Nobody's
I tested for that though, but I don't. So
okay. Okay. Well,
uh,
then it must be the Black Plague.
yeah,
That's the
something
only other logical.
for sure. So yeah, if I cough before I mute, I apologize. I'll probably grab a Kleenex or two, but we'll make it through. We'll power through because I'm
We're
feeling
gonna
good. Just
yeah, we'll be good. All right, so let's talk about your company because I find your company fascinating. You said what did you call it? An ESOP?
yeah, ESOP, Employee Stock Ownership Program. So um, Steve asked me if I was an owner or anything like that, and I said, well, yeah, we're all owners here at Centrix because we have an ESOP program. So we're very much given the ability to say, hey, have an owner's mindset because I mean we own stock in the company. So everything that we can do to increase profitability or reduce costs, grow the company, things like that, it's all comes back to us, on the back end. So I'm not one of the executive leaders, but I am in a leadership role. But even your tier one help desk, we're all part of the ESOP program.
That's awesome, man. I think that's the way to do it to give employees some ownership in the business because what better way is there to get everyone to actually work hard and like and
Yeah.
care. And I don't mean work hard like be a slave driver about it. I mean work hard like having people that are willing to come in, put in the time, do the work. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
and not only that, just finding ways like, hey, I think we can make this um, uh, more quicker, or I think we can do this better, or we don't need to be doing this, or hey, we should be doing this, right? Like any and all of these ideas are encouraged because we all have the same goal of bettering our company and growing it.
yeah. So with that said, you guys you do, I would say, probably a lot of cybersecurity, considering you have a lead cybersecurity specialist. Uh, so why don't you walk me through like what does your tech stack look like for the guys who want to nerd out on the tools for a minute.
And so the tech stack is pretty comprehensive, and that's kind of where a little bit of this rant comes into is, all how many times is that the question? Or if you're in the RMSP on Reddit or Discord, and it's like, hey, what are you using for this? What are you doing for that? What does your tech stack look like? But my pushback on that is, why do you have certain things in your tech stack? Like, what's driving that? Do you have it just because everyone else has it? Do you have it because it's an insurance requirement? What is the whole idea behind your tech stack? So, before I get into the tech stack, I might be jumping ahead a little bit. We've developed what we call the Cybersecurity Maturity Model, and we follow it internally, and we have our clients on it as well. And it's a 5-stage cybersecurity maturity model to where you're making improvements over time to increase the maturity as you go, and our tech stack revolves around this maturity model. So as you increase, or as you're going up on there, or being our tech stack, like, hey, you get this tech stack and we can get you to level 3, level 4, etc. And there's a variety of things. Obviously, you have your EDR, your MDR, security awareness training, backups, vulnerability visibility, vulnerability management, patch management, looking at things like DNS filtering, next-gen firewalls, and then getting into the compliance side. One thing that we really push forward is your policies and procedures, because they're extremely important and they're not fun. There's nothing sexy about talking about a disaster recovery plan. It's not the same as fighting the bad guys and responding to incidences, but they're super critical for any business to have. It doesn't matter your size. You need to have a disaster recovery plan, a business continuity plan, having an incident response plan. So we have a core set of policies that we work with our clients to get them compliant. And then from there, getting into more kind of some of the advanced things, we're looking at more projects, such as hardening projects, potentially looking at outsourcing like penetration testing and things like that. So it all falls on this maturity model as you go. But in our baseline, you're going to get the EDR, the MDR, with a little bit of SIM in there. You're going to get patch management, vulnerability management, security awareness training, enhanced email security, things like that.
Perfect. All right. So, the $1 million question: how do I sell more cybersecurity to my clients?
Well, see that it is. I mean, it is a $1 million question, but here's my take on it: is it should be in your stack. I mean, you're not selling them more cybersecurity because this is stuff. It's not an optional. You need it, right? So it shouldn't be all this like a la carte stuff. Like, hey, you should. This enhanced email security or gateway was going to decrease all of this stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And you can say, all the stats, like email is the most common form of compromise. It's your most common form of attack. So you need this. And if a client says no, and now they have a business email compromise, and then you're like, oh, well, you should have bought it, right? Wouldn't it be better just to have that as part of your base stack? And then not have to have that argument or anything like that, securing the client. So again, with our maturity model, we're building towards is you have the base stack, and then we kind of look at above and beyond there, right? So how do we increase your maturity? So you get the base stack, you have your base, covers your cybersecurity insurance requirements, covers hey, like these are just the table stakes of what you need to be a secure organization. But then from there, what do we continue to do? Because you're never safe enough, right? We need to continue to grow, continue to mature. That's where we're looking at, we're following our maturity model is based off of the CIS controls in the background. And if you're familiar with the CIS, Center for Internet Security, it's a security framework, one of the more common ones. So we basically simplified that. So when we increase this maturity, we're meeting all of these controls on the back end, right? So the a la carte stuff that would be outside of the stack are more projects, more compliance, right? So doing like 365 tenant hardenings to secure it. That's not really a product or a solution you can do. That's just going to be a professional service. Your compliance stuff, building those policies, some procedures. And then when you have those things in place too, I mean, we're not insurance experts, but we do work closely with cyber insurance specialists. If your business has, a disaster recovery policy, business continuity plan, incident response policy, you have those in place. They're reviewed annually and you test them. If you have a good cyber insurance agent, they can go to bat and say, hey, this client has these sort of things. Like, they review them. They're a much lower risk. So now we can look at, better coverage, potential, maybe not, in some cases I've seen lower premiums, but really it's just, better coverage and the right fit. So, again, not a cyber insurance, but we work with them and we've seen it. When you increase the maturity, now you have these things and it's like, hey, cool, we can get, better coverage. So it all goes back to benefit it. If they need to follow a regulatory requirement, if you need FTC, if you need HIPAA, we don't really deal a lot with CMMC, but regardless, I mean, if you follow one risk framework and you get 80% of the way there, you're going to be good, right? You just have to find the specifics that you need for your regulatory requirements. So our goal is just, let's get you a baseline secure environment, and then we can start looking at the specifics.
Gosh, it's like you and Matt Lee. Like, what's with you guys saying just follow a security framework? Why can't I just make it up as I go?
I mean, you certainly can, but then what direction are you going, right? You're just having these tools for the sake of what? Having them? You like, why do you have these things in place? And now you could be looking at potential overlap. If you're familiar with the term left of boom or right of boom, if you're in the MSP world, you've probably hit that. But boom is like the incident, right? And your whole point of these tools are going to be like to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And the things that you need to protect are going to be like devices, applications, networks, data, users. So you have this like matrix, right? And if you put your tools on there, you might find, well, these tools are overlapping. These tools do this, these tools do that. But again, you're coming back to, well, why do you have these here? And what is it, what is your stack doing, and what's the point of it, right? Is you need to have, I mean, there's got to be some sort of clear like roadmap to go off of, and what's next, and things like that, and continually looking. So if you're not following a framework, really, you're just kind of throwing things on there and hoping they work.
Well, and not only that, but who are you to say my framework is better than CIS or than NIST? Like, you know what
Exactly.
I
Yep.
mean? Like, who are you to say that you're more knowledgeable about cybersecurity? I mean, what do you think you are, Matt Lee? And even he follows CIS.
Well, yeah,
So,
and yeah, it's like the, what is it, the XKCD comic? Like, there's 37 frameworks. Like, we need to develop a new one, and then they like, we're gonna combine all of these and figure it out, and then now there's 38 frameworks. So that's our our whole goal is, it doesn't matter what framework you're on. We're building you a base level like security and compliance to, no matter what compliance or framework you want to follow, you're going to get there. I mean, we've had clients who are like, well, I need to be ISO and I need to be NIST or even, like CMMC, right? And we're going through, like, they're looking at like super specifics, like, oh, this needs to be, FIPS or whatever compliance you need to throw out there. But they're missing base level things. Like,
right.
hey, MFA is not enabled on everything. So let's start there, right? And I think really that's what boils down, like, I mean, me being in the space long enough, not just on the cybersecurity side but the IT side, doing the basics really well is missed by a lot of companies and even a lot of MSPs. So focusing on the basics, building your baseline, is going to be way more valuable than just trying to find all of these specific tools that do these specific things.
Hey, just a random tangent. Yay, ADD. What's your thoughts on passkeys? I'm a fan,
You're
but
talking about these guys right here, these little YubiKeys?
no, not the hardware ones, the software ones.
Software passkeys, like, so are you talking about like the ones that self rotate, like the certificate things, or what are more like?
It's called passkeys. I don't know how else to. It's
Uh,
so the way I describe it is, you know how some of these companies are saying they're going passwordless,
yeah, so you do
and
like the
then
biometrics or like the Windows Hello, thing like
yeah,
that, or like the PIN facial recognition.
yeah.
Um,
So like Google and LinkedIn and Facebook, Twitter, they all started supporting what's called passkeys.
yeah,
So I can set up a passkey with like one password, for example, for each of those sites. And instead of typing in my username and password, I just submit that passkey. And then it still asks me for my second factor.
yep.
It's just a way to log in without a password.
No, it's a good step in that. So there's going to be a lot more phishing resistant. First off, because if you're set up with a passkey and someone steals your username and password, well, what does that get them, right? And then I think on the user side, what that really prevents too is using the same damn password for everything. So if you're using those passkeys and setting them up, it's kind of like a form of SSO to an extent. But how many people do you know still that this is their password and they use it for everything? Work email, for your Facebook, their Gmail, etc. So you're removing those. Um, I think there's more technical answers to like the local authentication, and it's a form of setting up MFA, but you're making it easy. But I think in one of Microsoft's recent ignites, they said that too. In a couple of years' time, they hope to remove all passwords on there. Um, yeah, you can't steal a username and password if one doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah. Now, my only concern is, can they steal the passkey? I know if it's a hardware YubiKey like what you just held up, I actually just saw an article that says there's some obscure way for people to clone a YubiKey. Now, I think
Yeah,
that requires them to physically have the device in order to be able to clone it, though.
yeah, they're look, man. There's nothing that's going to be foolproof.
Sure.
So, making it harder is definitely the goal, and they're going to be more. They're going to be more secure than passwords. But the entire goal here is risk mitigation, right? So you're never going to completely mitigate the risk, but it's going to be a much lower risk. It's going to be much harder to compromise that passkey than it is to be a password. Um, so yeah, it's still possible. But that's something we tell our clients and stuff too. Is like, hey, even if you're a level 5 on our maturity model, you have all these things in place, you're still at risk. There's 0 days and things like that. But the other side though is if you're prepared and you've mitigated all these risks, when they do happen, you're going to know what to do and you're going to be able to recover much quicker. Right. So again, going back to the passkey versus password, it is more secure. It's less risky. But it could still happen. I think it'll be much harder though.
Hmm. All right, let's get back to the topic at hand. Um, what's the topic at hand? Oh, yeah, selling
It's security.
cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So your argument is that we should just include everything in like a baseline stack, and
Yep.
not everything. Not,
Yeah. Not
obviously, you can't include
everything.
everything, but if you have things that you want all of your clients to have, then just include that in your baseline stack, and stop having these woulda, coulda, shoulda arguments with yourself internally, and just put your clients on what you want them to have.
Yeah, 100%. Again, not everything. Like a SASE solution, for example. Next gen VPN for simpler terms. Not every client is going to need that. But does every client need EDR? Well, yes. Should every client have enhanced email security or MDR security awareness training? Again, those are baseline things. Look at, if you're not going to follow any framework, at least look at what is the base minimum requirements for cyber insurance. I'm sure all of us get those. Hey, I'm renewing my cyber insurance, and can you help me answer these things? Look at that, and what are they asking for? Do they have it or not? And if that should be there, there's your base one stack right there for you. Um, but yeah, I don't just having those a la carte, or like you said, the woulda, shoulda, coulda, or when they get breached, like, oh well, you should have been on this, but you guys declined it, and now now you've created a conflict with your client rather than just working with them. So have your baseline stack, have what everyone needs, but yeah, don't include everything. I mean, leave room, your professional services or some of the other security solutions, kind of like a SASE, or um, like I would say like an actual penetration testing. Not to go off on a tangent, an external vulnerability scan is not a pen test, and maybe not all of your clients need them, so don't have that in your stack. Because well, first off, an actual pen test is going to be like $10,000 to $15,000, and good luck fitting that into a stack. Um,
Okay. So, how do we sell somebody penetration testing though? Because that's like a deeper conversation. How do I get a customer excited for a test that they are supposed to fail and then a whole bunch of documentation that's going to make their eyes glaze over?
So my first thought on that is, where are they at on the maturity level? Again, if you're not following your base level one stuff, if you don't have MFA, if you're not doing, you don't have like full network coverage, if you don't have, know like what you're trying to block and things like that, or if you haven't done like a tenant hardening or a network hardening, I'm going to save you $10,000 and say, hey, let's do that first, right? Let's get you, again, the secure baseline. Let's get you to a good spot. And then from there, now we have a third party pen test that goes in and helps us determine, what's next, or what holes exist, or kind of how we can improve that. But we're not ready for that. I mean, that's level 4 on our maturity model. So, let's get there. And then once they're there, do you have a regulatory requirement for it? What is the thought process behind, why do you think you need a penetration testing? Again, if it's a regulatory requirement, okay, you have to get one. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If we want that, hey, like, we think we're in a good place, but we want to see, like, where can we improve? Perfect. We're going to bring in a third party because we're the ones who helped you secure your environment. We shouldn't be the ones that are breaking into it, because when we're grading our own work, that's a conflict of interest. And then work with them to scope out what that looks like, and then it'll help not only you the client, but also us, to determine what next steps are to better secure your environment, or at the very least, let's say, hey, it's pretty secure, they weren't able to get in. Cool, now we can test our incident response policy, our disaster recovery policy, live, kind of, right? Doing a little better than a tabletop, right? Hey, this isn't a scenario and we need to activate it. So even if our defenses are great, we can still simulate and know what our response looks like.
So, let's talk about your cybersecurity maturity model. Did I get that right?
Yep,
Okay. So, how many levels are there?
there's 5.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
can you
camera
walk me
5.
through each of the levels?
Yeah. So you're level 1, and then so really, again, it's based off of the CIS. So if you're familiar with CIS at all, they have implementation groups, so IG 1, 2, and 3, and you're supposed to
Hmm.
follow them as you go. But there's like 170-ish controls, and if I tell a client, hey, we're going to be following CIS, we're going to do these 170 things, like, not going to go over well, right? Especially when doing these presentations. So what we've done in the simplest forms of this presentation is broke those IG groups down into simpler 5-stage controls that are very easy to read, easy to understand for anybody, whether technical, C-level, etc. So, for example, at level 1, in order to pass level 1, we need to have patch management in place, which is covered by typically your RMM, but then we also need to make sure that third-party patching is enabled, looking at network devices, things like that. MFA is enabled anywhere that it can. You have EDR with MDR. You have security awareness training. You have a designated security officer. So the client has to appoint somebody to be the go-to person that is a security champion internally. You have an external email notice. You have a 3-2-1 backup strategy, and you at least have vulnerability visibility. You don't have a full management solution, but you're at least aware of what vulnerabilities could potentially exist in your environment, so you can patch the most critical ones. Um, to me, really, that sounds a lot like what cyber insurance is requiring, correct?
Yeah.
That was the goal of it, right? Is level one is just, that's your baseline. Hey, this is what table stakes security is, insurance is requiring. And then we go into level two, and it gets a little more in depth, right? And it all builds off of each other. So in level one, we have that one designated security officer. Now in level two, we're building out the incident response personnel. So who are the other key stakeholders? Who else do we get involved? So obviously we would be a part of that, but then is it other C levels? Is it other vendors? Is it the insurance? So building that kind of who to call list around that designated security officer. And then from there, we're looking at, having a next-gen firewall with like IDS, IPS capabilities, doing DNS filtering that ties to a CIS control, doing a tenant hardening or Active Directory hardening, network, some sort of hardening on the environment, and then an MDM plan. So again, going with the tenant hardening, we have like MDM deployments. And then from there, we're looking at more of the policy side. So disaster recovery plan, business continuity plan, financial controls. So like wire fraud. And this comes directly from working with cyber insurance. There are particular providers that won't cover wire fraud transactions if you don't have a financial, like a wire transfer policy in place. And then last, we look at geofencing, which again, if you have an next-gen firewall, if you're doing a tenant hardening, you're going to be putting geofencing in place. But again, that's just a control that's on there. It goes back to the CIS and insurance controls. Excuse me. From there, we go to level three. And again, we're building. So in level one, we need to have a 3-2-1 backup strategy. Now in level three, you're going to be testing those backups. So that way, if you do need to restore, you're confident that you're going to be able to. Level one, you're doing security awareness training. Well, now in level three, you're doing role specific training. If you're in a manager
What
position,
kind of training? I'm sorry.
role specific. If you're in a manager position, your security training needs to look a little different, because you're going to be targeted with more spear phishing. You might have more insider threat kind of things like that. So just doing that role specific training, which again is another specific CIS control. We're doing basic asset management. So this is where I ask you, can you produce a list of your hardware and software assets? That's all we're looking for at level three. Having network documentation. Do you have a network map? Then we're getting a little more technical with here and enabling some authentication controls. So if you have a VPN, let's throw make sure MFA is on it, or maybe looking at radius for Wi-Fi, or looking at passkeys or Windows Hello instead of passwords. And then starting to look at some data protection policies. So starting that fun data classification plan, where we're building out, hey, if making sure, so it's not your full DLP, but making sure you have like your data classification, whether it's like the green light protocol, where your sensitive data, things like that are. Building a vulnerability management process. So if you do have a critical or a high, like what is your time frame for getting those resolved? What's your emergency patching process? Setting that process on there. And then finally building that incident response plan. So you have your designated security officer, you have your personnel. Now we're going to build out a full plan. Hey, this is what happens. Here's who we contact. This is how we contact them. Here's doing what, and then our process of following that incident. So we tell all clients, no matter what vertical you're in, no matter what regulatory requirement you're in, we want you at a full level 3. We're going to work with you to get the full level 3. And the other thing with this too is we put a lot of responsibility back on the client. And obviously, we're their technology and security partner. We're going to follow them and help them the best we can. I always tell them it's football. We're going to get you to the 95-yard line, but ultimately, it's your company, it's your data. You have to be the one to take it that last 5 yards and be responsible for it. Going into level 4, now we're getting into more of the technical stuff. And again, going back to the clients, we tell, hey, everyone needs to be at a level 3. Once we're at a level 3, then we can start looking at what of these things in level 4 or higher make sense for you. Is some of these things might be too expensive to put in place, or it just might not make sense. Right? You wouldn't build a $10,000 fence around a $100 horse, right? But some of these things are important, and we should be doing them. So we're looking at service provider management. So list of all your service providers, potentially what they have access to, list of criticality, things like that. We have now vulnerability management and remediation. So this is your full-blown vulnerability management solution. So we're scanning for vulnerabilities. We have the process for them. Now that we have those things in place, we can actually do the full-blown vulnerability management. We're following our process on how we're patching those and then adding things to our risk register, regularly reviewing those. Level 4, we can look at getting penetration testing. We also have the advanced data protection. So you have all that data classified. So now we can build policies around retention or how we're putting those DLP policies in place. At level 4, we're also doing looking at a SIM deployment. So hey, cool, you have all of these security tools in place. Let's make sure that they're aggregating the logs and we can respond to them better. Looking at SSO deployments, doing reviewing for RBAC and access control reviews. So making sure we're doing regular reviews on who has access to what and making sure it follows role-based access control. And then we're doing an advanced inventory asset review. So this is more than just, hey, produce me a list of hardware and software. Like this needs to be reviewed at a regular cadence and making sure that we're handling any unauthorized things that might be on the list. And then getting into level 5, and typically this is hidden. Your inventory review, it goes from a regular cadence to this needs to be done weekly. And again, it's a direct CIS control. Looking at advanced log collection. So they're very specific logs that need to be collected, usually around like PowerShell or command line, things like that. Your advanced service provider management. So again, not only are you building that list, but it's being regularly reviewed. There's more controls around that. Doing full-blown like data segmentation, air gapping. So you see that like these things wouldn't apply to everybody, right? This is just, hey, what can we do to further lower risk? And these are the last things. So that's kind of that's the levels in a nutshell, right?
Wow.
And the beauty of them too is, again, you're building on all of this, and we want to talk about the stack, right? It doesn't matter, it does matter what you're using, but we never say, hey, we're using this particular vendor for EDR, et cetera, right? We're doing EDR and MDR because we want to make sure that we're using the best product that fits not only our clients' needs, but our needs as well. And that might change, right? Today it might be this vendor, but then next year it might be this vendor. So we have the ability to still follow our maturity model and follow the timeline, but changing out vendors as needed.
I I I don't know if you noticed, but I was typing furiously. Thank God for 110 words per minute um, on my typing tests. So I was able to write down. I'm pretty sure everything for 1 and 2. Level 3, I got a little fuzzy toward the end, and then level 4 and 5, I'm gonna have to go back to the recording and review those just to make sure I didn't miss anything. But I gotta say, I'm sure you didn't give me every little minute detail. You just gave me big picture. Here are the most important bullet points for each of these levels because, like you said, there's what 170 objects
Yep.
to maintain with CIS, right? And this list only has maybe 25 or 30. So there's a lot that goes into all of this. I can appreciate and respect that. But I love how you've kind of broken it down into digestible levels for your clients to, uh, I don't know, understand better. And the fact that you've said, look, I need all of my clients to get full level 3. So I get it. Some clients are going to only start off at level 1, and they've got baby security or no security, and I need to basically build everything from scratch for these guys.
Yep.
But everyone's going to get to level 3.
Yeah, that's the goal. And to your point about, the high level, that was the whole point, right? If we look at the CIS controls, like we want to talk about service provider management. Let's get technical here. That's control 15 of the CIS. So when I say service provider management, behind the scenes, we're looking at 15.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But like, if I bring that to a client, I'll just say it, like, no one gives a damn about CIS controls. No one gives a damn about 15.4 unless you're me or Matt Lee or other people in the security industry who
Right.
nerd out about this stuff. But what makes sense is when I say, hey, we need to make a list of your service providers. We need to have classify them and monitor them and assess them. Like that's simple turns, right? And that's what CIS is doing. We're just simplifying it from behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, we have clients who bring on prospects that they're, like you said, maybe at a level one or just starting off, and that's fine. But now we have a roadmap. Now we always know what the next step is. When we do the QBRs or business reviews, whenever they may be, we always know what the next goal is, where we're going, continually. And even if you have a client at a high maturity level with the 3 or 4, there's still things that we can do to improve on. So we never stop improving, never stop securing. Like, we always have something to talk about. We always have something on the roadmap, whether it's a project, whether it's a potential new solution, things like that.
So let me ask you this. Let's say it's just your regular run of the mill client. All they need to do is get through level 3. They don't have any special requirements. They don't even necessarily need to adhere to any regulatory compliance, but obviously they're going to adhere to yours, right?
Yep.
Um, what happens when they get to full level 3? Do you have clients that go, well, we're done now. I guess we don't need you anymore. Like, do you have to have that conversation with them? Be like,
No, um, no. At that point, what it becomes is reviewing and maintaining, right? Like, okay, cool, you're there, but we're not just going to say, oh, you got an instant response plan, you're good. You never need to look at it again.
Mhm.
No, that needs to be reviewed. It needs to be tested. People need to know their rules and things like that. But again, you can never be too secure. So looking at, hey, what makes sense from this? Like, where are our risks at, and how can we lower them, or how we can improve on them? So it's not just, hey, building all of this and throwing your hands up and say we're done. It's continually reviewing and maintaining those takes work as well.
So if you have a new client and they don't even have the foundational stuff done, but they come to you and say, hey, we want to start using Copilot and we want to train it on all of our data. Um, Obviously, you, the IT guy, understand that they probably don't have the appropriate guardrails in place in order to be able to do that,
Yep.
right? So you know what we've seen people uh, query all sorts of files and documents that they just shouldn't have access to, thanks to Copilot, and find out who's getting let go in the next layoff, and all that stuff, right? So how do you approach that conversation? Because advanced data protection is part of level 4, and what they're asking you to do is set them up with some level 4 stuff when they're not even done with level 1.
Yep.
So will you continue working on level 1 but also work on level 4 stuff, or do you tell them, no, you're just not ready to do this yet?
No, it's meant. I mean, the maturity model is meant to be a roadmap, but there's no reason that if there's a business need that dictates it, that we can't jump around, right? It just gives us a roadmap of prioritizing. I think the better answer is, you go into this place and they don't have anything in place and it's in shambles. What do you do first, second, third, fourth, right? That's what the maturity model is meant to do, where it'll prioritize based off of the highest risk items. But again, where the whole goal here is addressing the risk, and then business needs, right? So if their business needs dictate, hey, we need to use Copilot, or we want to use Copilot, then we have that business risk to them. Okay, well, let's say we introduce Copilot to your environment in its current state. Here are the risks that you might have in there, insider threat, or again, having the data leakage and things like that, right? So we need to focus on that, and we can secure that. And I think our best bet on that is, let's do your tenant hardening, because with that, we're going to make we're going to review settings around external internal sharing, with information in your tenant, and then we can look at data protection policies, lower the risk as possible. I don't think we'd right away tell them no, because ultimately, again, it's their business and it's their data and it's their decision. But at least on our end, we can accurately describe the level of risk and help them make a business decision that hopefully will allow them to use it, but lower some risk on there. Nope.
What do you do when you come to uh, find that you have a client who kind of is likes the risk almost? It's so I'm thinking of myself right now. I want to play with the new toy, risks be damned kind of guy. So I'll deploy the new Apple beta on my production computer and that kind of thing without thinking like, okay, if I do this, his team's going to crash and I can't do my work. So I don't think about that bigger picture stuff, and I might screw up my whole workflow because I don't think about risk. How do you have conversations with those types of clients? Because I'm sure you've had at least one.
Yeah, that's when you put on the contracts that that can save you, and then you get billable hours. Yeah, but no, I mean it's having that partnership and the communication, the regular cadence. We're very much we're a security focused MSP, but we're very much partner first. So when we get into those co-managed situations, it's just building the trust and having the relationship with somebody. Might be like an IT director, or very technical and hands-on. So they're going to work with like our virtual IT manager. We call them VITEMs, virtual IT manager, or the virtual VCIO, or even myself in kind of like a virtual CISO role for them. But and again, ultimately, I guess it's their business, right? And if they want to deploy it, then we can help them fix it and help them have that conversation. But I think um, the other answer too is if they're looking to do that, if you're accepting a risk, that's what we bring in. That's what you call a risk register, right? Like, hey, this existing environment is a risk, but we accept that risk because we want to do it for whatever business reason. So then, hey, the client signs off on a risk, and then it gets reviewed on a regular cadence. You don't just say, oh, okay, well, this risk exists, we're good, we're going to wash our hands out of it. Because the whole idea is we should be getting rid of that risk at some point. We should be looking to mitigate it or improve it. So it constantly needs to be brought up in some sort of review on that. But just documenting and signing off on it, on that communication.
And at some point, you have to look at your employees or your clients' employees, or sometimes your clients, and say, you know what, there's just too much risk here, and sometimes you need to let somebody go. And sometimes that means you need to let go of that employee who likes to install the Apple beta on their computer, or maybe you need to let go of a client who likes to throw caution to the wind and do things without consulting with you, their MSP, their trusted advisor, and all those other things we put on our websites that every other MSP also has on their website. you know
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, and not all revenue is good revenue, and it is a risk to have those things, as the MSP. So sometimes you do have to make the hard decision, But the other thing with this maturity model too is, again, we're working as a business partner. We have these projects, we have this stack in place, but if the client does this on their own and they can prove and attest to it, we still, hey, you're meeting this, right? So whether they get it from us or they're doing it, like, they can still improve their maturity. They still get the check mark that's saying that they're doing it. Again, we're working with them and giving them a roadmap. So if you do have a client who is co-managed and says, "Well, I'm going to build my own policies and do this," instead of getting your solution or doing that, it's like, hey, great, have at it. You can do it. I would just ask, like, can I review it? And if it's fine, then cool, we got it checked off. But
So, uh, I I love, and this is me peeling back the curtain a little bit for a moment. I love watching other podcasts and kind of taking away something interesting and unique that each of these podcast hosts do or does or whatever the appropriate tense of that word is. Um, and one of my new favorites is the Daniel Tosh podcast.
Oh, I
Uh,
love that podcast.
oh my goodness! And he always asks people, "Are you afraid or do you believe in ghosts?" And I don't want to know if you believe in ghosts. What I want to know is, I want to know what are your thoughts on AI? Are you bearish or bullish on AI as a whole? I'm not
Yeah.
asking about open AI or Anthropic or I'm not asking about any particular company. Um, what are your thoughts on AI? How do you feel about it?
Dude, it's scary. I mean, I think that's the best answer. Is it's scary. It's super awesome to see how far it's developed, and I mean, I use it not only in the business life, personal life. I just made there's a couple song AIs where you can give it a prompt and it'll give you a song, and those are fun. But then it's like, well, crap, we have people whose job it is to make that art, and now it's being replaced with AI songs and things like that. So I mean, mixed feelings on it, but it is a little scary to see like how quickly it's learning and changing. And I mean, even just Chat GPT from where it was introduced a couple years and a half ago, or maybe a year ago, I don't even know. Maybe about a year ago, to where like the general public was like, "Hey, we can use this," to now. Um, and then I mean, I've been to a couple conferences over the last month, and people are showing like, hey, it had the developmentally, like, it's a toddler, right? And then in the next like 9 months, now it's like middle high school to like doctorate level, and it's predicted to just learn way quicker than any other technology has learned. So in that aspect, I mean, it is a little a little scary, right? um, but I mean, I don't know. I'm embracing it. I'm using it. Like, it's inevitable, right? So we need to be educated on it, and we need to figure out how we can use it safely. Again, not only for our businesses but our personal lives and stuff too. I have 3 kids. I mean, they're going to be growing up with it, right? They're in elementary school right now, but eventually they're going to be in middle school and high school. And now it's like, well, like, we need you to write this essay on this. Well, then it's like, well, they can just use this freaking Chat GPT. And I know there's like plagiarism and things like that that are supposed to detect it, but it's still there, right? It's going to change learning. It's going to change like life as we know it. So
Hmm.
to sum it up, I'm scared, but also excited to see what it can do.
I gotta say, personally, I'm not scared. I find it to be amazing and hilarious all at the same time because you're right. There are AIs out there that will like write a song and then do all and so like I being a musician, all the AI songs are junk. Okay, will they improve? Probably. I don't know. I don't care. Um, the reason I enjoy the AI music is because some people are just so creative. They give it some wacky prompts and they get some stupid songs. And then they'll just like, there'll be a dude listening to the song for the first time, playing drums to it. And he's just losing his mind at some of these lyrics. And I don't know. I like those videos. So, generative AI, I've been using for 4 years now. I was using it before ChatGPT was a thing that people used, and I like it. The hallucinations are hilarious. Ask it how many R's are in strawberries. Um,
I've had a few. I mean, I was using Copilot to I had it I had a policy question where I was basically, hey, this is the policy I'm at, and then it was like, based off of this line, like, could you draw this conclusion from it? And it gave me an answer, but then it started going self-aware and talking to itself. And I'm like, whoa, what are you doing, Copilot?
I've never
Like, it
had
was like,
that.
oh, I'll try to find it. I'm sure I have a screenshot somewhere. I'll post it in our Discord. But yeah, it was literally like, that's a good response. Thanks. I please to give like the best responses I can. Like yada yada. Like thanks for being like security minded. Like you're welcome. Like it literally started having a conversation with itself. I'm like what is
Oh, that's
going
so
on
cool,
here?
man.
But from a non like art side, I mean, again, it's only going to get better. But the same type of people that are like, hey, how can we improve this? There's also the unfortunate side of people are how can we use this for not good things, for for threats or gain, like financial gain, or not good things, right? And it's only going to increase on that side. And this, when we say scary side of things, is those people over there, they don't have morals, so they're going to be able to figure out ways and ways to use that for bad things. And then we're over here trying like, hey, how can we make this safer? How can we try to set up guidelines and things right there? Like, so we have to halt production on it to make sure that we're doing things morally or in a safe manner. So we're going to constantly be fighting an uphill battle there. So um, I mean, yeah, there is the aspect where it's super fun to make those really silly songs, and I've definitely made a few, or using Dolly to make ridiculous images and having it help with things. But we can't cast a blind eye to the unfortunate,
Mm,
threat actor side of it as well.
that's a really good point. And one thing that I want to stress is that people are up in arms about AI. The only thing that's revolutionary right now is the generative AI. The fact that it's able to create now is new. But I see a lot of businesses putting AI as part of their marketing hype
Oh man.
when it's more like machine learning, and it's more like I I mean, okay, think about like video games for the past 40 years. That's kind of AI, isn't it? All
Yeah.
the non-playable characters and all the enemies you defeat, and playing Street Fighter against the computer, like it's it is AI. So we've had AI for years, guys. The problem is the marketing around AI right now is just stupid.
we were looking at I was working with my boss. We have like a leadership summit coming up here internally, and it was like, hey, let's just make a high level 3-year roadmap. And I jokingly, it was like, we need to put AI on like everything. Like we need to be just like the vendors, like whatever we put on there, just make sure the word AI is in there
Oh,
somewhere.
absolutely, yeah.
uh,
So, and I'm sure my company is not immune to that. I'm sure we'll start doing AI stuff here soon, um, and I'll tease the guys for doing it. So my boss is not immune.
well, I mean, it's one of those things too, where it is the buzzword, but then you pull behind the curtain. It's like, well, what is it? Well, it's like you said, it's machine learning. So it's a
Mhm.
large language model, and it's learned, based off of this pool of data that you're putting into it, and then it just can quickly index that and produce what it thinks is the best response given the information that it has. One really funny article I saw a reel yesterday or a couple of days ago, is that some of these large language models are rickrolling people because of the data that it's grabbing. It's noticed that humans have rickrolled for, I mean, how many years? Like, it's one of the most shared YouTube links of all time. So in some of the responses that they're giving, they're like, you can view this knowledge base here, and put a link, but then the link is to the rickroll video. So I mean, it's only as good as the data that it's given, for better or for worse. And the Rickrolling is part of the data it has.
Well, Josh, I really appreciate you hopping on here with me today. Um, your cybersecurity maturity model, that is difficult to say, but I can do it.
CMM.
Um, your cybersecurity maturity model is really cool. I'm really impressed by what you guys have built. You should be proud of yourselves, truly. I'm sure some MSPs are going to take what you've built and steal it and turn it into something that they can use. And honestly, I hope they do, because let's be honest, everyone could be a little more secure.
Yep. Rising tides. So, reach out if you have any questions. I'm in many different discords and communities, and this is something I'm very passionate about. And I'm always down to help others, which is, why I'm here on the podcast. So,
Awesome. Well, you yourself, I hope you have a good one. You listening, I hope you guys have a good one. I'm waving, and I'm not used to this view, so people can't see my little hand. There you go. Bye, guys.